Welcome. My name is Mark Donohue, and I'm a seminarian from St. Christopher's Parish and studying for the Diocese of Wilmington for the priesthood. Have any of you ever wanted to send a bouquet of roses to the Blessed Virgin Mary? Many of you probably already have, by praying the Rosary. The word rosary comes from the Latin word rosarium, which means rose garden or bouquet of roses. The prayer beads that we're familiar with to pray the Rosary wasn't actually originally called the Rosary. It started out as what is called the Paternoster Beads. It was 150 beads where people would pray one Our Father on each bead. The reason they did this is because the monks would pray all 150 psalms each week. Many people were unable to read, so to share in the prayer life of the monks, people would pray the Paternoster Beads. It wasn't until the 12th century that the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared to St. Dominic and encouraged him to pray the Rosary and use it as a tool for preaching because he was struggling against the heresy of people falling away from the faith in his time, and he wasn't able to successfully bring them back. But once he started using the Rosary, he became a very, very effective preacher. The reason being is the Rosary is broken into different mysteries where we reflect on the life of Christ and all the saving acts that he did to bring us closer to him. We reflect on the Nativity, the crucifixion, the ascension into heaven. All of the mysteries are something that is designed to bring us more familiar with his life. It's essentially like a pocket gospel. Now, the prayer Hail Mary is what is prayed on the beads instead of the Our Father. Why are we praying the Hail Mary? Well, the Hail Mary prayer has an interesting history as well. The Hail Mary originally was half of what it is today. It was composed of the angelic salutation, which is Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, the words of Angel Gabriel at the Annunciation. The next part is from St. Elizabeth when Mary visited her in her pregnancy with St. John the Baptist. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. Interestingly enough, it wasn't until the 14th century, during the Black Plague, in a time similar to our own, where people were afraid of dying from a pandemic. And in their fear, they reached out to Mary for her intercession, saying, "Pray for us now in our fear, and at the hour of our death." Their death was something that could have happened at any moment. And for many of us living in fear during the virus, it is a very poignant part of the Hail Mary. Now, the Rosary is something that we consider a spiritual weapon. And if you think about the religious habits that you may have seen from the Franciscans or the Dominicans, they usually wear their Rosary on their left hip. This is because this is where the sword was kept. Now, the Rosary is something much more powerful than an earthly sword. There's stories throughout church history of the Rosary being used during great battles, like the Battle of Lepanto, where the odds were stacked against Christendom. But the soldiers and the whole church was praying the Rosary to succeed, and the great battle was won. And even more importantly, the Rosary has played a phenomenal role in spiritual battles throughout history. There are so many miracles tied to the Rosary that have proven its power as a spiritual weapon. On a more personal level, the Rosary is great for growing in your own life, in the life of virtue. Many of us struggle growing in the life of virtue and seek wisdom and truth from Christ. And the Rosary is a tool that can do this very effectively. With each mystery, there is a virtue tied with the mystery. One of my favorites is for the mystery that reflects on the crowning with thorns. The virtue of interior peace is associated with it. This is very powerful for me because if you think of Christ in that moment being crowned with thorns and being spit on and mocked, he still maintained his interior peace because he knew his identity. And for us as Christians, we're often mocked and belittled. But growing in the virtue of interior peace through praying the Rosary and all the other virtues associated with each mystery is a great blessing. Another dimension of the Rosary is the repetitive aspect. Some people think that there's no need to say a prayer over and over again. But the repetitive nature of the rosary helps us enter into a more meditative state. Even today, you hear psychologists saying, use the word peace or calm over and over again to relax. And we live in a very fast-paced world, constantly inundated with sensory overload. So to take the time to step back and meditate is a great thing to do using the rosary. It's also something that affects our mind, our body, and our spirit. It affects our mind because we're meditating upon the mysteries of Christ's life and what he did for our salvation. It's using our body as we move through each bead in our hand and as our mouth articulates the prayers. And it's affecting our spirit by helping us go closer to Christ with his grace. There's been many saints who have promoted the rosary throughout history as well. I mentioned St. Dominic already, but there's countless others. St. Francis of Assisi, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, St. John Paul II, St. Maximilian Kolbe, a very heroic martyr. Even the popes in our recent time, Pope Francis, just this past month, has been very much encouraging the rosary for us in the month of May, and he even wrote 2 prayers for us to pray after the rosary. The Church has recognized the beneficial aspect of the rosary by attaching indulgences to it as well. Mary's main goal in sharing the rosary with St. Dominic and ultimately to all of the Church is to bring us closer to her Son, into a deeper relationship with Christ by meditating upon the mysteries of his life. This ultimately happens when we gather together for the Eucharist at Mass. And outside of Mass, we have the time to take a walk and pray the rosary, while we're driving to pray the rosary, to gather as a family to pray the rosary. And if this is something that you haven't started doing or haven't done before, you don't have to start praying the whole rosary all at once. You can pray a decade here or there. If you have a special intention, you can pray a decade of the rosary, asking for the intercession of the Blessed Virgin. And over time, you can seek to try to pray the entire rosary every day. So many saints have encouraged people to pray the rosary every day. And I know it seems like a lot because when I was younger, my grandfather was always telling me to pray the rosary every time I saw him. And I basically said, okay, thanks, Pop, and then I never did it. And I just didn't think it was necessary. I thought maybe it was too repetitive, or why am I praying these Hail Mary prayers? I didn't understand it. But eventually, as I realized that he was a very wise man, as I became more of an adult, I started to pray the rosary. And it really did help me come to a sense of peace with God's will for my life. And each one of us can benefit by seeking to pray the rosary and ultimately becoming more aware of God's will in their life. Now, if any of the things that I've mentioned just now have been interesting to you, there's a book by Father Donald Calloway called Champions of the Rosary that has so much information in it, it's kind of mind-blowing. There's history, there's saints' quotes from all the different saints who have promoted the rosary throughout history. There's accounts of the battles, such as the Battle of Lepanto. There's accounts of so many miracles. Some of them have, kind of blown my mind. And I highly recommend checking out this book. And if you can't find the book, then I would check out maybe Father Donald Calloway on YouTube, or St. Louis de Montfort has a book called The Secrets of the Rosary, which is also another famous book on the rosary. But at the very least, I do encourage you to try praying the rosary if you're not already. And if you are, I encourage you to continue, as all of us seek to go closer to Christ. Our Lady of the Rosary, pray for us.